Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at many of the top 10 Bitcoin mining stocks. Starting off with crypto fear and greed, you can see it's still elevated and high into greed, so not too much of a change there. And on the alt season index, for a while, we have been seeing a series of higher lows and higher highs. Right now, the alt season index is showing us a higher low, so some possible discounts in the market. Did a video earlier today talking about my views on the crypto cycle alt season, so subscribe if you want to hear more about that. But before we get into these mining stocks, taking a quick look at Bitcoin and where Bitcoin is at right now, you can see that overall, I erased my fib, so let's redraw this again. If we draw a fib from our most recent high, macro high to low, and take our fib off log scale, right now Bitcoin is stuck at the 1618 at around 102K. So we've been talking about this a lot. 102K, 1618. And so far, the Heikinashi candles are only wicking above. We are not seeing it close above yet. And if we do, then we can start seeing Bitcoin make some strong moves up, I believe, if the 1618 then turns into resistance. Or, I mean, sorry, if it turns into support. Last time in March, when Bitcoin was making all time highs, it never closed above the resistance of the 2021 all time highs. You can see there was many times it wicked above, but that all time high line still was resistance for quite some time. All right, let's get into Bitcoin mining stocks and first start off with Mara, the number one mining stock with a market cap of 6.25 billion. So let's see how Mara is doing right now. So you can see overall it is still in this giant wedge pattern. It might start to break underneath it a little bit. You can see here there's a couple higher lows right there, but just connecting the very bottoms, there's definitely some connection with these higher lows that you can tell right now. So we can move that around a little bit, but either way, Mara stuck in this wedge pattern. What I do like is that it is holding up support, not just on that trend line, but on the 50-week moving average. We have the 100-week and the 200-week being bought up. So you can see those wicks coming down and getting bought up pretty nicely. If we go over to the daily chart, you can see on the flip side, the daily is showing resistance at those moving averages, and it hasn't been able to turn the 50 or the 100, which are pretty close, they're all pretty close, into support quite yet. Zooming out, if we take a look at some other indicators, for example, our stochastic RSI, we can see that the stochastic RSI has bottomed and is possibly getting ready to flip upwards. If we zoom way in, you'll see that it was getting ready to have a positive cross but came under again. So it still may be another week until we see a positive cross on the stochastic. And if we go over to the moving average convergence divergence, also known as the MACD, we can see that that hasn't truly started to flip positive yet. So I'm sure we're going to see similar data across the board with the various miners that we're going to go through today. So just for the sake of this video and get through the other miners in these top 10 lists rather quickly, we'll be taking more of a quicker look at the fibs and the moving averages. So right now, as far as Mara is concerned, though, to put a nice bow on it, do I hate the value here? No, I think for dollar cost average, it's okay. Would I want confirmation as well? Yes, I would. But if you have money burning a hole in your pocket and you just want to dollar cost average in a little bit into the top mining stock, I don't hate this level here for Mara. Next, let's get into Riot. And as far as Riot Platforms is concerned, we have seen how this has been in a descending channel for some time. You can see the moving averages of 200, 150 are inverted. However, for Riot, it is getting bought up nicely on that wick on the 382 fib, the 50, and the 100. And zooming out again, you saw how I drew my macro fibs. It's again from the low, or sorry, from the most previous high to the most previous low. So right now it's at the 382. There's the moving averages. did get a big sell, but the 382 is being bought up. So some good value there. However, if those moving averages and that 382 gets lost, it would not be surprising to see Riot come down into this range between the 382 and the 236 fib. So just be on the lookout for that if things in crypto were to go a bit sideways. Going over to the daily, what do we see here? The moving averages aren't inverted. They're actually quite regular here, and you can see it's settled right at the 382 and the 200-day moving average. So getting bought up there. And if you like Riot, again, here with at least fibs and macro moving averages, I don't hate this area for some dollar cost averaging. Does it have confirmation? No, not quite. It's probably going to show us similar things as we saw in Mara, where we saw the stochastic. Yeah, this one, it hasn't quite bottomed out. It's not even close to crossing over yet and giving us that confirmation. But if you're just looking for levels, possibly to get some value, and you're just purely looking at discounts, and you believe this will do much better down the road, then I don't hate Riot here. Let's go over to BitDeer and see where BitDeer is at. And so for BitDeer, as we zoom out, you can see we drew our fib from the high to the low, and right now our fibs are regular, and so we're gonna, because the price action got above its former all-time high, we'll take our fib off log scale, even though we keep this on log, and you can see that it wasn't able to quite hold on to that 1618 fib here, and BitDeer has come all the way back down to the former all-time high, almost, but that 100-week moving average is right there. And so people are buying right above it, but this is still in a downward trend. Right now, lower lows, lower highs. Looks like a descending channel to me. So would not be surprised to see some support here at around this 14, let's just say $15 range, give or take, for BitDeer. But there is definitely profit taking at that 1618. So overall is looking for some sort of support. I do like this 100 and former all-time high. Let's see how BitDeer reacts if the price is able to get to that level, and if it's truly able to get some sort of support. Next, let's take a look at Core Scientific, more of a newer, younger mining stock, and we've been talking about this one almost since the time it came out, but we don't have a macro competitive advantage with this miner, so we only have so much to look at. And one of the things that jumped out to me about Cores right away is how high it was on the list of miners. Now, I've spent this time, so you don't have to. If you take a look at other miners further down this list, their charts are complete garbage, at least a lot of them. So this is why we take a look at miners within, I guess, the top 15. In my opinion, you might find a diamond in the rough further down, and if you do, comment below and we'll chart it out. But as far as Cores, its market cap is up there with BitDeer, and so it's really number 3 overall. Mining stock was number 2, I believe, at a point in time. But that is concerning to me, and especially with the chart that we have. So yes, it has pumped. The balance sheet, as I looked at, had a not so good ratio from assets to liabilities. Yes, it did well in here, but if there's any sort of negative downturn in the markets, when a stock has a not so good balance sheet, it will do worse. But what do we see going on here for Core Scientific, at least with the data we have on the daily? You can see that on its way up, when we just chart from the low to the high, from the high, it got under the 236, and right now it is getting some buyers at this 200-day moving average. So all those wicks right at the 200-day moving average at around $11. It's a little higher right now. But if you love Cores, and to hell with the market cap, and you like the research that you've done on this one, it's at the 200-day moving average. Not a horrible area, but right now it is still red. We don't have great confirmation yet. So if you're just, it's harder to find those macro competitive advantage indicators with charts like this. So if it did get under the 200, the next area where you can see there was some price action before would be around this 3.2 area from, I'd say, in between $8.80 and $10, let's just say in there. So we're not too much higher than that with cores. Next, let's go over to CleanSpark. I know we have some CleanSpark fans that watch these videos. And what do we got going on for CleanSpark? So this one reminds me a little bit of Mara just because it's in this giant wedge pattern. And overall, the chart, it did have some nice bounces off the 0.5 fib and this trend line from the very bottom. You can see these series of higher lows here. So far, CleanSpark, it is honoring that trend line on the daily. Those moving averages are inverted. You see it wasn't able to take the 200. It's probably the last test, the 200 and the 618. So if CleanSpark is to make a move up, you want to see it hold the 618 at around $12.60 as support. Going over to the weekly, what do we got here? I guess just more of the same. The 50 is above the 200 and the 100, but if this were to start moving positive, of course you'd see the 100-week moving average correct itself. So if you like CleanSpark, not a horrible area. I think this is going to be a common theme with many of these miners. They're not at a bad area, $2 cost average in, but do we have confirmation? Not yet. You would be dollar cost averaging in hopes that you are getting a good discount, and if it goes lower before we get confirmation, you just have to be ready for that to possibly happen. Next, let's go over to iron and see what this chart is looking at. And iron, we've been talking about how this has been making a series of higher lows and been bouncing off that trend line quite nicely. However, what do we see? This has been the biggest wick underneath that trend line, connecting those higher lows. Not a perfect trend line, but I tried to connect it as well as I could, getting almost down to the 50-week moving average. So the 50-week moving average classically is the dividing line between bullishness and bearishness. So, and that's usually not too far away from the 200-day moving average, which you can see some buyers coming in right there, the wicks coming right down to it. So if you like iron, you got the moving averages or you're close to it. Yes, it's decent discount territory, but this thing's been running up and creating those higher lows for a while. Off its most recent high, you can take a look at that. That was around 41% off. Sorry, I got rid of that too quickly. So most recently, about 41% off from its recent high. But again, do we have confirmation? Not quite. And so it could go lower. And if it does, then you're looking at, we got to put our fib on log here. Correct this so we could talk about the fibs. You can see the fibs here never got above the 786. If it got below this area, you'd be taking a look at the 618 as support, and look how many times that was resistance before. So if iron came down to the $8 range, high $7 range, that would not be shocking. And if you like buying iron here, then you should love buying it here. And from the most recent high at that 618, you'd be getting 50% off. So just something to think about if it gets there. And next, we're going to skip over Phoenix Group. Their chart's really weird. Let's go over to Hut. Hut, if you remember last year, they had some legal troubles and the stock was not doing so great. A lot of people were saying Hut was garbage, but taking a fair look at it anyways, we have the macro high to low fib, and what you can see is Hut really not looking so bad after it broke out of this wedge down here. Kind of reminds me of Wolf a little bit as we get into Wolf's chart here. And maybe it's the next one coming up, but wasn't able to quite hold the 618, came down. It's right now being held up by the 100-day moving average on the weekly. Yeah, it's still a little bit of ways. And so because it got so disconnected, maybe that's just why it's coming back down to that 0.5 fib. And that 0.5 fib is right about where the 200-day moving average is. So if this 100-day moving average isn't able to hold, then you could look for maybe a more of a discount, $2 lower. So $18 for Hut. And the next one is TeraWolf, and then we'll end with Cypher. So let's go over to TeraWolf, and let's see if that chart is looking a lot like Hut's chart is looking like. And in my opinion, it is. We have this wedge down here, broke up, 618, and then right now is at the 0.5. You can see this trend line. We have this trend line of higher lows, and it broke underneath that in a big way and is losing that 0.5 fib as well as the 200-day moving average. So not looking so good for Wolf here. If it isn't able to hang on, we could possibly see it go lower. There's some price action here at around the high to mid $3 mark and the 382 down here at 290. Let's go over to the weekly. So as far as the weekly is concerned, one thing that does look nice about this weekly candle is even though it's wicked all the way down here, the candle body staying above the zero point 0.5 and the wick is being bought up at the 50 and the 100. And so there is buyer demand there. Last time we had a bad wick like this after a downtrend, look what happened right here. That wick was being bought up at this 50-week moving average and the 382. So could this be something similar? Let's measure those moves out from high to low and see how similar they are. So this is when TeraWolf had a 58% correction, and this is when TeraWolf, thought I clicked it. Let's try that again. This is when TeraWolf had a, not too far away, 56% correction. So almost the same percent of a downturn. And so if you believe that correction is going to be it just from the very top, then you could be looking for a buy down there. I am curious if we drew a fib from the low to the high, if that would show us anything as well. Yeah, that's just, at least as far as what I'm seeing here. Okay, our fib's good. It's just at that 236. You can see the 236 there, which is at 473, which is where the price is right now. So the price from the low to the high is at the 236. So maybe some good dollar cost average opportunity for Wolf. I know it sucks seeing it go down 50+%. And could it go lower? Sure. But just compared to this move, maybe you could possibly find a possible bottom, if we get confirmation. But again, if you're going to buy here and we don't reverse like we saw back here in last year, July, the summer of 2024, this would be the next area to look for, $2.80 to $4. And the last one we're going to take a look at is Cipher, the number 10 mining stock. Cipher Mining with a market cap of around 1.56 billion. And by the way, as far as my price targets, we can take a look at the price targets from our fibs, looking at the 1618 extensions and 2618, so on and so forth. But I also think you can consider market cap as well. How high of a market cap do you think this could get to if we were to have another alt season, another 4-year cycle, another alt season? Could it 10x and have a market cap of around 15, 16 billion? That's a question or for you to ask yourself to find your own answer. So I have my thoughts. I think for some of those, for ones like this, I could see maybe hitting 20 billion, but above that, I think that's wishful thinking. Anyways, with Cipher Mining, let's make sure our fib's all good, and it is. We can see that, actually, let's add one more in here. Let's add in that golden pocket. So when people are talking about the golden pocket, by the way, they're taking a look between the 618 and the 0.65, and let's see where that is right now. So it's just sitting right above it. But because we did this with our last miner, let's do it for this one. Not quite to the 236, which is at about 390, I think that's saying. So from the low to the high. But on the weekly, what do we see here? We're talking about how these wicks are being bought up at different moving averages and fibs, and that's what's happened here. Is it at 450? Yes, where is 450? Right now, 450 is just right about here at the 100-week moving average. So this is the price of where it's at right now. Not too far away from the 382. Is that the 382? I'm all messed up here. No, that's the 0.65. Sorry, it had the same color line. I knew the 382 was wrong. So the golden pocket, 420 to 373. It might fall back in there. But we are seeing this get bought up at the 50, the 100, and the 0.65, not the 382. My bad. Let's go over to the daily. What do we see here? We saw that the 786 was never able to be taken after a few tries, and it's lost the daily moving averages. So again, we're looking for that 420 area at 0.65 to hold up. You can see on the daily it did wick there and got bought up immediately. So, in my opinion, it does look like it's looking to possibly settle right around that 0.65 line or at the 618, right in between there. And if it does, maybe not the worst area to buy, but depends how much you like Cypher. Again, I think the overall theme of today's video is good dollar cost average opportunity with the moving averages, with the fibs. However, we don't have confirmation yet. We are seeing some decent discounts, 40, 50% discounts from the most recent highs. I know there's a higher high over here, but even ones like this, 40 to 60% in that range. So if you love any of these miners, they're 50% off, baby. What's not to love about that? So, anyways, we don't have confirmation yet, but I'll do videos on this pretty much every week and let you know when we are seeing that. Do know when we see confirmation, you're typically not getting the very bottom. You're getting confirmation and a move upwards. So you do lose some of that discount. But with that being said, it's impossible to ever know when the true bottom is. So that's a game you play. Do you want a profit sandwich where you don't need the bread and you get 80% in the middle? Or are you happy dollar cost averaging in when it hits those lower values and discounted targets? That's what we've been looking at today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.